no helicopters have been procured for me to go to golf course. Thank you.
I've never said he wasn't a great politician. I'm just saying he's a officer.
It's supposed to be an interview.
How'd you play out there today?
Well, I found the conditions challenging, mostly because there's no grass on the golf course, but there never has been.
I'm thinking about the swag bag, and I had a high hope for the swag bag.
When you got 3 crevices on the green, your course is trash.
What is going on, folks? Welcome back at Beltway Golfer Podcast number 58. Your host, Alex Dixon here. Got another fun one for you. Sat down with a gentleman named Nick Green, who has spent the majority of his career in the world of golf. He is a Brit, as you'll quickly hear from his accent and voice during our conversation. But he's been based in Montgomery County for quite some time. Has had his hand in golf in a variety of ways. He's currently founder or co-founder of 2 separate businesses. One, his consulting business, as well as being a player agent for about 9 golfers, which he talks about with Progressive Golf Sports and Entertainment. And how about this for timing? We sat down and recorded our conversation out at Washington Golf and Country Club on Friday, August 26th. He mentions it in our conversation when he's talking about a couple of different players that he represents. But one of them, Thriston Lawrence, he quickly talks about how he's competing in the European Masters on the DP World Tour this past weekend. Thriston went on to win it. So, as this podcast coming out, just 2 days ago, this Sunday, Thriston Lawrence wins the European Masters and shoots up to 9th in the European rankings. How's that for timing? So big weekend for Nick Green and Progressive Sports and Entertainment as one of their guys brings home a big trophy over in Europe. Pretty cool. Wild timing. But we hit on a lot of topics. We really didn't talk about Thriston Lawrence really at all. We hit on both the businesses that Nick has founded. Towards the end of the conversation, we talk about Nick being a Golf Digest course rater, which is interesting. But he's been in and around the game of golf since he was a kid. And there were so many different things to hit on. One of the things I never even brought up that was on my list, but we didn't mention at all, that is he's played golf with Seve Ballesteros. Wanted to ask him about that, but just totally forgot. We just got caught up into some other stuff. But one of the main purposes we wanted to get him on is we hit on it right at the beginning of the conversation, is on September 12th. He's doing the 100-hole hike down at Schoolhouse 9. To support Youth on Course, and that's being put together by the Virginia State Golf Association. We do mention a couple other people in this podcast and reference them being on the Beltway Golfer podcast, one of them being with Schoolhouse 9 and the owner Cliff Miller and architect Mike McCartan. That's episode 28, if you want to check that out. As well as he mentions Josh Stevie, who he's playing with in his foursome at the 100-hole hike. Josh was on the podcast with Brian Kington, episode 37. So definitely check those out as well. But it was a fun conversation. And, I also pitched pretty early on my own concept for a 100-hole hike. If you think it's crazy or if you want to be a part of it, as I think through putting it together, shoot me a note. Also this week, the 3rd edition of the Beltway Golfer newsletter is being put out. If you are not subscribed yet, go to beltwaygolfer.com/newsletter and just enter your email. You're signed up, or just shoot me a note on social media and just send me your email address and I'll get you signed up either way. But it's a good way to stay up to date what's going on with Beltway Golfer, but also, what's going on around the Mid-Atlantic and the DC area in terms of golf news stories that you might have missed. So certainly check it out. Gave a shout out on Instagram, but want to do it here as well. Since the last pod, played a couple fun rounds, including this past weekend out at the Tinderbox event hosted by and put together by another former podcast guest, Desiree Walker, who I should have looked it up. She's either episode 5 or 6. She was an early one. but she's the founder of Road to Par, and she puts on this annual event. It was the 7th annual Tinderbox Classic. Tinderbox is a cigar store down in Waldorf. But it was a scramble, and I got paired up with 3 ladies from Philadelphia that are part of the Green Ladies Golf Club up in the Philly area that apparently is the oldest golf club made up of African American women in the Delaware Valley, which is, kind of like Wake Robin here in DC. They're not quite that old, but another historic African American female golf club up in the Philadelphia area, and I had an absolute blast with my 3 playing partners. I want to give them a shout out. But that's it. Otherwise, one sponsor to talk about today: Fore Cocktails, transfusion in a can, and they should be real close. By the time this comes out, you might be able to get some of the other flavors that they're getting ready to drop, including 4 Tea, Ranch Water, Bloody Mary. Haven't had them yet, but I'm excited to. Go to forecraftcocktails.com, F-O-R-E, craftcocktails.com, and you can order them directly to your house on their website. But they're also available in retailers in Virginia, Washington, D.C., and I believe South Carolina. We'll have to double check that on forecraftcocktails.com, but definitely Virginia and DC, which is most relevant here. And if you're in Maryland listening, just again, go to forecraftcocktails.com website, and you can order them directly to a house. And their transfusions are absolutely delicious. They bumped them up to 7% ABV, pre-mixed premium vodka with ginger ale, lime juice, and grape juice, ready to go in a can. Big fan. That's it. Let's get to the podcast conversation with Nick Green, founder of Macduff Consulting and co-founder of Progressive Sports and Entertainment. And congratulations, Nick and team, on your client Thriston Lawrence's big win this past weekend at the European Masters. Here it is. Enjoy. So we're out here at we're in the Wilson Room at Washington Golf and Country Club.
That's right.
With Nick Green. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. Thanks, Alex. For having me.
First of all, thank you for helping set up these accommodations. This I've never been in this room before. It's beautiful. For any folks that are checking this out on YouTube, no video, club policy, and we're respecting that. So this is a pure audio podcast. But you and I, we didn't meet too long ago. We met, I don't know.
We keep dancing around each other,
right?
For the last few years.
Right. We played golf at Laurel Hill.
We did.
And your reputation preceded you. I was aware of who you were and followed you on social media. Certainly Macduff Golf, your consulting business, which is at least one of your social media handles, Macduff
Golf, yeah.
Right. So let's. There's a couple different reasons that were a lot of different reasons I want to sit down and talk to you. But let's get one right at. We're going to talk about your history, all the different things that you do in golf. But let's get one right out of the way early. Second week of September, you are doing which most golfers are familiar with at this point. One of these 100-hole hikes with youth on course. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Goodness knows why I got cajoled into this, but because I'm getting old. But we're going to do a 100-hole hike at Schoolhouse 9. So that's the good news. Schoolhouse 9, for those who don't know, is a wonderful golf course. 9 holes, designed by Mike McCartan, down in Sperryville, Virginia. And in association with the VSGA, Virginia State Golf Association, and benefiting Youth on Course, we are doing 100 holes in a day. The we being, I think there are 10 hikers at that venue. My hikers are friends of mine, Josh Steve, who's on the Link Soldier.
Yeah, he was a guest on the show.
Right.
I'd have to look up which episode, but he and Kington.
Very associated with Laurel Hill, and we played with him out there. Dave Baisden, who's the artist.
Yeah.
And Glenn Gray, who I call the PR guru, who works for Buffalo.
Right.
So the 4 of us are going to trek on down there, and we are endeavoring to raise as much money as we can for Youth on Course, which is an organization, registered charity, that provides $5 green fees for girls and boys. Last time I looked, more than 1,700 golf courses in the country. So it's a great cause, and we're all out there rattling our tins trying to get people to give us money.
Well, it's a good choice, of course. Schoolhouse 9 is 9 par 3s, so you're not playing some 7,500 yard course.
And frankly, I'd never get round. So,
so there's 10 golfers. Did you all organize together for this?
The Virginia State Golf Association's organized it and pulled it all together, and hopefully they'll have cold towels and drinks and food and what have you. But we're organized and ready to go, so it'll be fun.
You know what? I cheated and I looked on the Youth on Course website last night for the 100-hole hike, and they've got these kind of leaderboards for money raised.
Right.
And of all the different state associations, as of today, Virginia is leading all of the state associations raising money for the 100-hole hike nationwide. And in Virginia, you know who's on top of the leaderboard?
I guess that's me.
It's you.
I looked as well. Well, in my heart of hearts, I'm a marketing guy, but also I'm a sales guy. So I've been finding my friends, and there's been some very generous people who've donated to Youth on Course.
Very good. Well, hopefully this podcast can help the momentum going. I love have you done a 100-hole hike before ever?
No, I have not.
Are you going to keep, I've thought there's a lot of these 100-hole hikes. Certainly Youth on Course have been doing this for a few years, but there's also people who have been doing 100-hole hikes for various charities throughout the years. And sometimes they keep, are you going to be keeping score? Is it going to make it competitive with the other three guys?
My competitive days of playing golf are pretty much over. I enjoy it and hitting it, and when I find it, I hit it again. Sure. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to play each 9. I'm using a different set of clubs. So I have many sets of golf clubs, way too many. In my office, and
that's an interesting wrinkle.
I'm just going to choose 3 or 4 clubs from each set. I've got every set of golf clubs I've ever had since the age of 16.
Oh wow!
Which is a long time ago, and so I kept them all. Don't ask me why. And moved them from country to country. Wow. And so I'm going to play each 9 holes. I'm going to use a different set of clubs just to mix it up, and then the other 9 holes or whatever it is, I'll probably just use a wedge. I read about the Pinehurst guy who played 460 holes in a day.
I haven't heard about this.
And he did 1-9 in 6 minutes, and he only used a 53-degree wedge.
And he holed out in 6 minutes, the whole 9.
The whole 9, but he did 400 holes plus, round and round and round, running, with just one club. How do you know that's possible? Yeah, I didn't.
Is that the cradle?
At the cradle. Yeah, not on number 2.
Right. Wow. So you're going to come down. So that's 11 rounds. Doing the quick math.
Yeah.
You're going to have 11 sets and 11 different bags.
I got 9 sets.
9 sets. Okay.
And then I'll mix it up. And they'll play barefoot, and other people are joining us as well over 9 holes.
Oh, interesting.
But hopefully it doesn't turn into 16 of us on 1-9, because otherwise it's going to take forever. But the idea is to tee off around about 7 o'clock. And we had a meeting with the VSGA and Youth on Course the other day, and they seem to estimate we'll be done by 3 or 4. I mean, I may be carried off on a stretcher at 3 or 4, but
that's a swift pace.
It isn't. We're not trying to run around. And as I tell these guys, I got a few years on them, so I'm really not trying to run around. I'm trying to enjoy it and have a good time, and I hope the weather's okay, that it isn't going to be 90 degrees. But anyway,
or thunderstorms or something.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. September 12th.
September 12th.
I'll remember that day. That's actually my youngest son's first birthday, so I'll be busy celebrating my kid. I know. I'm too old to have a 1-year-old, but first 1-year-old birthday. That's very cool. And so, real quick, so where can people go? Just Youth on Course.
You can go to find it. You can go to 100holehike.org.
Okay.
And dig around, and you'll find the Virginia State Golf Association in there, and that's where you'll find me and Josh and Dave and Glenn and the other hikers.
Sure. Before we get into everything, Nick Green, I'm going to take 1 minute to pitch my idea on my own 100-hole hike. That's on brand for me, and I want to hear if you tell me this is crazy. I know it's crazy, but if it's doable.
Yep.
And if anybody listening can pitch in, because it's Beltway golfer, the concept is 100-hole hike, 100 different holes while doing a full circumference around the Beltway.
Wow, that's a great idea.
I've looked on the map. I've mapped it out.
It's logistics
and coordination with golf courses. I think
in a day.
And I think you'd probably have to fit. And I think my idea would be starting, down south of DC, like maybe Bellhaven or Greendale. You'd have to figure out maybe do either a public hike or a private course hike. Private course might be easier if you did it on Monday when courses are closing or closed. But you probably have to finish with a headlamp on, I would think.
Are you playing 3 or 4 holes at each course? I mean,
No, you do like 9 or doing 18 or just
it's doable.
I think it's doable.
That's a great
We'll
idea.
see. We'll see if I ever put that together. It's a concept in my head, but I haven't not organized.
Sounds like a fall of 23.
Maybe exactly. All right, so let's get into you and your history, because I know you've been in the golf world for quite some time. Let's start with present day, and then we'll go backwards a little bit, and we'll kind of bounce around a little bit. But so right now, you have 2 companies that you have a major role in, either founder / owner. You have the Macduff Golf Consulting, and feel free to correct how the title.
Macduff Golf, yeah.
Macduff Golf. But then you also have Progressive Sports and Entertainment.
That's right. So I wear 2 hats. Macduff Golf Consulting is a business I've had for many, many years, and I essentially Washington Golf is a client of mine. It's one of the reasons we're sitting in their lovely Wilson room. So for Washington Golf, we produce their monthly magazine. They still produce a monthly magazine for the members. I've worked with them for many years.
So how would that come about? Like when you first started a relationship with Washington Golf and they reached out to you and said, hey, we need somebody to make a monthly newsletter for us or a monthly magazine?
Correct. And it's content, creating content, and the logistics of creating content and pulling that content in from all the respective departments and people and putting it into a format where people want to read it. And we have also a digital version of it, which is a member-only publication, as you can imagine.
So folks within the club are the ones actually producing the content, like writing articles or stories or history.
And then we edit it.
I see. Okay.
It comes to us in raw format, in many forms, PDFs and Words and Pages docs, and we pull it all together with all the photography.
Okay.
Every month it comes around. As you know, as a man who does content, it comes around very quickly every month.
That seems like a lot of work. Just your first example seems like a full-time job.
It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. Members enjoy it. It's called the T.
Okay.
Patrick Toby, who's the GM here, found the logo from the 20s, and we used that and recreated that.
Is it digital only or is it print?
No, it's print. We still print it every month, and also there's an app in iOS and also in Android.
Oh, cool.
And then also we create it on the website for the members, and they go in and see what's going on and who won what and who won the swim. And this issue, September issue, which we've just gone to press, is always a tricky one because there's volumes of winners of pool and swim and pool and which we create.
Oh wow! So you got to keep folks up to date on like every little nook and cranny, every small event that's happening within the club,
as much as we can in a limited format.
Sure.
And then we can have run on digital. So I work with them.
What are some other examples?
And then we recently, beginning of the year, we started working for Penfold Golf. Now, Penfold Golf is an old, nearly 100 years old British company that kind of fell to sort of rack and ruin 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And a guy up in Philadelphia approached us, and we helped them with kind of 3 things: business strategy, communications, and distribution. So we're relaunching Penfold Golf to the US market. That you can go online and see at penfoldgolfusa.com. But we're really helping them with the wholesale distribution and communications of the brand. So right now there are golf bags, and obviously there are golf balls because it's famous because of Goldfinger way back when. Right. And there are gloves and there are shoe bags, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole range coming for 23, including clothing.
So like for the Penfold example, is one of the reasons they would work with you is that they're primarily across the pond. And
the owner of the brand is actually up in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right.
And he's a Brit.
Gotcha.
And so we got along pretty well from the get-go. Yeah. And as I'm sure other people pitched our services and said, we think we can help you. But Penfold, I grew up playing Penfold.
Okay.
So there's kind of a little inherent interest there as opposed to, it's just another client. I love the brand. I've always loved the brand. All the iterations it went through in the 60s, 70s, 80s when I was playing golf.
Is the current owner, is he somebody that acquired the brand after it kind of fell on hard times?
Yeah. And he acquired the marketing rights to it. And he's a product guy and has come up with great product, and so hopefully people will see that as we get out there, and we're in quite a number of clubs already. and putting certain product into clubs. We're not putting the golf ball, for example, into clubs because we're not going up against Titleist.
Right.
But there's a considerable range that's available online. So I'm helping them from a point of view of introducing to them the clubs that I know, but also helping them from a strategic point of view that how do we grow this brand over the next several years.
Sure.
So I have a call later on this afternoon with a brand who are looking to do something similar, obviously completely non-competitive to that, who approached me and said, hey, we'd like to help. Can you help us? And I said, well, I don't know. Let's talk.
So the way that Macduff kind of acquires these clients, is this really through relationships and your reputation and for all the years that you've been in the business?
Yeah.
Or are you soliciting, meeting folks at the PGA show and other places and saying, hey, this is what we can do?
It's like all sales. It's a little bit of a mixture of both.
Yeah.
We're pretty selective. I have to really love it. That's my number one arbiter of good taste is, do I love it? If I feel passionate about it, then I'll get involved. We get approached for some things that I don't feel as passionately about, and we respectfully decline.
Okay.
We obviously we like to get paid, but we're not just taking things on just for the money. That's not really our bailiwick to do that.
I imagine that's sometimes can be a tricky balance, but that's the key to enjoying what you do.
It is about, of course. You got to, I got a kid who went to college 2 weeks ago. We still have to pay the fees, but at the same time, no doubt, like you have to feel something about what the content you're creating to really get into it 100%. And if we don't, then you don't want to make that call,
right,
and introduce that brand into your existing relationships.
Approximately how many clients? Ballpark?
About 4, and some we talk about and some we can't talk about. But we're helping behind the scenes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is really, is it fair to label it as a boutique consultancy?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then more recently, over the last couple of years, a very old friend of mine, going all the way back to when I was involved with the Volvo Tour, when I represented players on the Volvo Tour, which became the European Tour back, and then is now the DP World Tour.
Right.
Anders Davidson came to me and said, I want to be in the player business. And I have been a player agent since 1991. First client I signed was Per-Ulrik Johansson, the 2-time Ryder Cup player, and represented him through his entire career, coincidentally another Swede. And Anders is based in Gothenburg. And he said, let's form a company where we represent players. And so that's what we did. And we've been reasonably successful, and we have players on. We don't have a player on the PGA Tour, but we're recruiting. We have players on all the other major tours: Korn Ferry, LA, DP World, Epson, LPGA, Asian Tour.
So now we're talking about progressive
sports and entertainment. Okay. Yeah. So we do a couple of things. We have golf and we have hockey. I am not a hockey expert at all. I'm not involved in that business, but from the Swedish point of view, they're very involved.
And just as a timeline, when did progressive get started?
We started about 3 years ago.
Okay. So Macduff was already going for quite some time.
Macduff has been going for 20 years. And that's kind of how I paid the bills. And then we started this, and we have it's done very nicely so far, and we're continuing to recruit. Our players are doing well.
I ran into you at the Wells Fargo Championship at TPC Avenel. Yeah, and you were following one of your players. Do I have that right?
You're right. Yeah. So really a great guy, Canadian, Drew Nesbitt.
Oh, sure.
He Monday queued and shot 65. I can't remember where now. Little Bennett, I think. Was it Little? No. I
can't remember.
I can't remember. He Monday queued into Wells Fargo, and save for a 6 at the second hole there, the par 3, he would have made the cut. He didn't make the cut.
Yeah. But unfortunately, I think that was the hole that I ran into you at.
Oh, that's what it was. You're right, behind second green.
Yep, exactly.
He just hit it green side.
It was kind of bad timing.
And putt, and oops, a daisy. But so we have. Drew is up. He plays the Canadian Tour, and these guys have got Korn Ferry qualifying coming up. Brett White is in. Where is he playing? He's playing Minnesota this week, and we have a number of other players. One of our star players is Thriston Lawrence, a guy not many people know yet, 25-year-old, won already on the DP World Tour.
Okay.
He was leading in Switzerland yesterday, shot 62.
Thriston Lawrence.
Thriston Lawrence from South Africa.
I imagine that's got to be an insanely competitive business.
It is.
The player business.
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
I have a few questions. One, if you again, ballpark, how many player agents or agencies are there in golf? Are we talking over 100? Are we talking 20? I have no idea.
There are different groups. I used to work for one of the big companies, ProServe, here in DC, which is why I ended up in DC. And thanks to the legend of Donald Dell, I got hired to come work here. So there are the big, and ProServe's been swallowed up, and
sure.
I don't even know which agency owns what was ProServe, but there are big agencies, CAA and Wasserman and these kind, and then there are small shops like us.
Is ProServe the one? I could be way off on I'm over my head right now, but is ProServe the one that was founded by David Falk? No,
it was founded by Donald Dell.
Okay,
and David Falk worked for Donald.
Okay.
Yes, and they, it's nothing to do with me whatsoever. Make that quite clear.
But that's where David Falk was during his heyday of signing all these NBA guys.
And with Donald, a lot of Donald's help. Yes.
Right. Okay.
With Michael Jordan predominantly, and Muggsy Bogues, and all sorts of, and Dominique Wilkins, and all sorts of guys. Again,
David Falk just must have been the one that was in the press all the time, because his face was he was the face you always saw.
And he ultimately went off and took Michael with him and formed Fame. The agency Fame, but David worked for Donald. Donald founded ProServe in the 70s with Stan Smith and Arthur Ashe. ProServe just simply standing for professional services. And so those were the first two clients. As Mark McCormack was doing his thing with the big three, with Arnie and Jack and Gary, Donald Dell was asked by Arthur Ashe and Stan Smith, hey, why don't we do this in tennis? So those were the big two agencies, pretty much the only two agencies. Which was ProServe owned tennis, and IMG, Mark McCormack's group at the time, owned golf.
Interesting.
And then, of course, now the wall of money over the last 30, 40 years has hit sports. And so
what does that landscape look like today?
You've got dozens of agencies. As I say, you've got the boutique agencies, seems to be the word du jour, of companies like Progressive Sports, where we have 9 or 10 clients in golf, and then the hockey practice. And then you've got big companies like the Wassermans and Octagons, where they have dozens of clients.
So what is that pitch? Like when you sit down with an up-and-coming young golfer, and they've got one of these big monster agencies also meeting with them at 4:00 and you're meeting with them at 1:00.
Right.
I'm sure that's not the exact scenario, but something like that. What is your pitch? Is it just more attention, more? That's
exactly the scenario. That if they're smart, and we encourage anybody we're meeting with to go meet everybody.
Yeah.
As our competition does. The competition, this is a professional business now, and it's about the personal relationship that you can foster with that client. Can we do things that some of the big agencies can't do? Perhaps. Can they do some things we can't do? Perhaps too.
Yeah.
It's about the relationship. We all know the same people.
Yeah.
We all know Acushnet and Callaway and Nike and all of these kinds of brands.
Sure.
It's the personal relationship and belief in the ability of that particular player that they can go all the way. Personal service is obviously critical to that as well, but I don't have 100 staff hanging around, so they're dealing, when we sign them, they're dealing with us, the owners of the business.
Yeah, interesting. Well, one thing for folks listening, I was on it last night, but I want to get the URL correctly. What is the website for Progressive? They can see your whole.
With progressivese.com.
Progressive
S like sugar, E meaning Progressive Sports and Entertainment.
.com. And they can see your whole player list there.
Yeah.
So going back a bit, because you already kind of teased it a little bit, that you said you had worked with some players on the Volvo tour.
Yeah.
So why don't we go into that a little bit?
Okay.
So folks can probably tell from your accent that maybe you're not you weren't born in the United States. So walk us through a little bit of why don't we go all the way back?
Okay.
Since we're going to go back to England, why don't we
let's go all the way back to 1976.
Okay.
Is that far enough back?
Sure.
I was a reasonably good golfer. I thought I was really good. Unfortunately, like many people, discovered at an early enough age I wasn't that good. And I had the good fortune at my club, Northants, which is where That's how I know Justin Rose, because that's the club Justin grew up. Not many people know that also was the club of Greg Norman.
Interesting. Okay.
So when I was literally 16 years old, met Greg Norman. He wasn't the Greg Norman we know of the 90s or particularly now. He was this young kid with hair down to his shoulders who came over and was represented by a very good friend of our family, a gentleman named James Marshall.
So he's still a junior golfer at this point?
I was a junior golfer, and Greg's got a few years on me, but he was 19, 20, 22, something like that.
But not on tour yet?
But not on tour. Well, he turned pro in 1976. Okay. First tournament he ever played in, the West Lakes Classic, he won it. Came to Europe, 1977, March, something like that, of 1977, and played in what was at the time the Martini International, first tournament he played in, and won it.
Okay.
And so this was the days where we were at Northants, and this tells you how I really am dating myself. The only way to find out was to call the press office and say, oh, how did Greg Norman get on? This is James Marshall, and I'm there in the room. Oh, he won. And so he won his first golf tournament, and the whole great white shark and all that thing came on, and James represented him for many, many years. So I was around Norman, played with him many times at Northants. And then you realize how very, very inept you are at golf when you play with somebody like that. Right. Now, at the time, we didn't know he was, air quotes, Greg Norman, right? Yeah. Going to be, amazingly, only won 2 majors, but, the greatest driver of a golf ball ever. Sure. And so I saw James managing him and kind of saw, okay, I could probably do that bit. I'm not going to be able to do the golf bit because I'm just not good enough.
Right.
And so it was always in the back of my mind. And by various means, I got very lucky and played with some people, played golf with people.
Did James remain his agent for?
He remained his agent until I believe 1984, and then Greg signed with IMG.
Got it.
Because Greg became this world brand.
Right.
And so I saw what James was doing, said I think I could do that. I read Sales and Marketing University and thought, okay, well, let's see if we can get in the golf business. Because I eat, sleep, breathe golf, as I still do. I was very fortunate that Donald Dell hired me. He was making a trip to London, and we were sitting at Wentworth, and I was approached.
So this was your first job in the business?
No, prior to that, I was working for Kellogg's.
Okay.
I went to Kellogg's, the cereal brand, and worked for Kellogg's straight out of university.
But not related to any of that. I mean, what was your role at Kellogg's?
I was in sales and marketing.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Fortunately, and I love Kellogg's. I still do to this day. It's just a fantastic company. Moved from Kellogg's, got approached by a guy who was building a golf course, a Canadian guy, Brian Turner, building East Sussex National, which ultimately ended up hosting the European Open. And another event that was run by ProServe. I was the on-course guy for East Sussex National, and then ProServe said, hey, you kind of seem to know what you're doing, you want to come work for us?
Okay.
And that's where I met Donald, and he said, yeah, you can come work for us, but you're going to have to come to our office, which is in Paris. So I moved to Paris for 4 years and ran the European business, and then ended up here getting involved in the US business in golf, but always golf. It's all I know anything about, to be honest. So when I was at ProServe, this is in the early 90s, then we were running events all over the world. So I was the commercial director of a lot of tournaments, making sure we made money, selling sponsorship.
Got it.
And on the ground, making sure the clients are happy. Is the coffee the right temperature, and the board's in the right place, and is the television picture looking like it should look?
So ProServe was in charge of running the tournament, the agency?
ProServe was the agent. Just as ProServe ran many, many tennis tournaments, we also ran golf tournaments.
Interesting. Okay. Is that still kind of the way it works? Agencies would be the ones running the tournament?
Not so much here. The US model's a little different. The European model,
but that still happens in Europe.
You have a promoter who owns the event, owns that week.
So ProServe would be the promoter.
We were the promoter. For example, the Volvo Open di Firenze in Florence. So we owned the week of Florence Open. We sold in the sponsorship, which was Volvo. And then we sold all the other sponsorship around that, and me and my team ran the event, soup to nuts.
Interesting.
Other than obviously everything on the golf course, which is the European Tour. So there's the distinction between inside the ropes and outside of the ropes. Everything outside of the ropes we were responsible for. Everything inside the ropes, the actual scoring and the rules and all of those things, just as it is here, is the responsibility of the European Tour as it was, and now DP World, and same over here. The PGA Tour runs everything inside the ropes. And everything outside of that, generally, the European model is the promoter.
And the American model, like take the Wells Fargo, for instance, where we were at Avenel, where we ran into each other.
Right.
Everything inside the ropes is PGA Tour. Outside the ropes
is whoever the agency is of Wells Fargo or Wells Fargo themselves.
Right.
Wells Fargo, I'm not familiar with that enough, but I suspect they have a team of Wells Fargo's people who are ensuring that the brand is presented in the right way, that the right people are coming to the hospitality, the tickets, etc., etc.
Makes sense.
So, whilst at ProServe, I was signing players. So the first guy was Peril Rick Johansson, Swede. Took me a while to sign him. Everybody wanted to sign him. He was a very hot prospect and won his fourth event out, won the Belgian Open, and ultimately played Ryder Cup 95 in Oak Hill, 97 Valderrama, and won both times. So I was at both of those events, obviously, and then progressed to the PGA Tour. Got his card here for a few years, and I was here at that time with ProServe.
It was around that time that you moved here, or you haven't moved here yet? You were just coming for work.
I'd moved in '95 here, and that was the transition. He was in Europe and moving, and then he ended up being here from '98 onwards for 3 or 4 years on the PGA Tour. And then unfortunately had to struggle with his hips, and ultimately he's had hip surgery, so he doesn't play golf anymore.
Oh, that's too bad.
Really, to the level he did.
Right.
And then we also signed, we had Katrin Nielsmark, who was Solheim Cup captain, several other Swedes. And so, we've had a good Sam Torrance, Ryder Cup captain. And then... Was he still kind of in his prime when you worked with him? Well, not so much when he was Ryder Cup captain. It was a little bit later on. But he's a great guy and very...
Great interview.
Great interview.
I've heard a couple podcasts with him. He's great.
And he's got more stories than you can shake a stick at.
Right.
And then Justin Rose as well. So we signed Justin after Birkdale and holding the wedge and all that kind of stuff. It had been a while, and reasons best known to themselves, the agency that had him put him straight out the week after, and that's when he famously missed, I think it's 21 cuts in a row.
For those, I'm not even sure I remember. For the recount, what is the anecdote you're referring to with the holding the wedge?
So
at Birkdale,
Justin Rose is an amateur, and he was doing very well at Birkdale, and then he ultimately ended up holding a wedge from I think 80 yards or 60 yards or something, and to make birdie to finish fourth as an amateur in the Open Championship. And then
so his stock just skyrocketed.
And we were recruiting him, and sadly he didn't choose us, even though I had a very close personal relationship. For other reasons, he decided to go with another agency, and that's part and parcel of being an agent. The day you sign them and the day they leave. That's just
So then he came to you some years later.
He came to us a little bit later because we ended up buying the company, which he was.
that's one way to get your guy.
Yeah. So I represented Justin for a few years, and again, then he got a very good offer from a big agency that we did not want to match financially.
And when you're representing someone like Justin Rose, you're representing him for his own sponsors. What logos he's wearing on his shirt, what clubs he's wearing or playing, all those kind of things.
Everything. So again, you're looking at what we call endemic and non-endemic. So endemic meaning tools of the trade: golf clubs, golf balls, shoe, glove, headwear, patches, and then non-endemic, which is everything outside of golf. So when you see Justin with, I'm trying to think of what he's got right now. I think he's with Condor, or it could be BMW. Whoever he's with, that's what we call a non-endemic. So it's not a golf company. And you are looking to place the client and sell the client into a corporation to use that client in outings, what we call name and likeness, so that they will obviously use that particular player in their marketing efforts.
And so you represented him for a few years, and then he just went to a bigger agency because they were guaranteeing more money, or
they were guaranteeing more money. I'm still very good friends with Justin. I saw him at the Open a few weeks ago and introduced him to my son. He got a kick out of it, and he is what you see is what you get with Justin. He's the 100% the real deal. He's a great guy. The way he handled it, and I always remember it, the way he handled leaving me, and we're friends. Yeah. He did it completely the right way. He didn't scurry away and did something. He said, "Listen, I need to talk to you. I've been made this offer." He shared the numbers with me, and I said, "Justin, we can't match that, and I appreciate you letting me know, and my advice is take the money." And he did. And so to this point, and there have been many instances well publicized where players have left their agent, where it hasn't gone down like that.
Right.
And that's why I have the respect I do for Justin and all he's achieved. And even though he went on to win at Merion, and I wish I'd been his agent, that's not the way it works in our business.
So how many years before that do you think that transition happened for him?
That was many years before. I mean, I'm trying to think when it would have been, 10 years before, something like that, maybe more. But I'm the biggest fan ever, and was.
So you still have a relationship with Justin?
And I saw him at the range at the Open. He hadn't seen me for years, and there was a bear hug, and I introduced him to Jack and my son, and then we followed him on I guess it was the Wednesday when he was playing with Bryson in the practice round.
This is just at St. Andrews?
Just at St. Andrews at the 150th Open, and walked with him and saw him pull up. I knew as soon as I saw him swing the golf club on, he was on 4 and tweaked his back. And then I said to Jack, he's done. Because I've seen that look before. And then he said to Bryson, I got to go. And then he went to the physio, and you'll recall, on Thursday morning he pulled out.
Yeah,
I could see it coming, which is a shame, but he's a great guy.
How many Opens have you been to?
I've been going to the Open since 1980.
Every year?
Not every year. I've missed a few.
Okay.
I've missed a few. At Muirfield, 1980.
By all accounts, I've not been to the Open yet. Obviously, bucket list for me. I want to do it, but tell us about what was the experience like at St. Andrews for the 150th.
As I said, I've been going a long time. This was the best. I wrote to the people I know at the Open. This was the best managed, best Open I've ever been to. Not just because it was 150th, but the staging by the R&A was absolutely first class, and the weather was great, so that helped. But that still ultimately doesn't impact staging. They clearly spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it showed from transportation through St. Andrews, which is a tricky little place.
If you've been going since 1980, I imagine you've been to an Open at St. Andrews before.
I have.
Was it vastly different?
It was just bigger and better, new and improved. They thought about it and they've got great people that work there, and they just managed it brilliantly. From the event they had on I think it was when was that event with Tiger, and they had the kind of Champions Challenge.
Right.
4 holes, 1, 2, 17, 18, I think.
Tuesday maybe?
Was it Tuesday? I don't remember. But we saw that and saw Tiger, and it was just well done and well thought through. And, the RNA's not afraid under Martin Slumbers to try some things. Yes, there's a tradition and a heritage to the RNA, but they're not afraid to push the envelope and try doing some different things to the betterment of the game. And they did a fantastic job.
Do you go back across the pond often?
Every year. This coincided with the trips to North Berwick. We go to North Berwick every year.
Very nice. I think I saw a couple of your pictures on social. Has the impact, has this kind of golf boom that's happening here in the States, is it kind of identical over there, or?
It is, well, and it was identical, but it's hard to get tee times.
Yeah.
The biggest impact for the brand name courses is you can't get a tee time. I mean, they're sold out for 23. If you're talking about St. Andrews, Royal County Down, Portrush, Royal Liverpool, all of these kinds of venues for American visitors.
Did those? So those are like the upper echelon of courses over there. During the actual pandemic, where there's all kinds of travel restrictions, and you'd hear about golf courses, certainly UK, that rely so much on international, certainly American visitors and golfers. Did that like top 10, like top tier of golf courses? Did they struggle during the pandemic, or there's enough golfers locally that could get there. That
Yeah,
did
there were
fine.
enough. I mean, obviously they missed £275 green fees because locals are not paying that,
Right,
especially in Britain. We're not used to paying the amount of money to play golf that you'll play here. I mean, the average membership at a club, and I don't know the exact numbers, but it's more like £1,000 a year, so sort of $1,400 a year, as opposed to $1,400 a month at private clubs in America. So Brits, we balk at seeing the numbers over here. Even the most private club, with the kind of Muirfields of this world, they will still allow non-members to access the golf courses. And they'll charge you to do that, but they essentially take that money and subsidize what the members locally pay to be a member of the club. So I don't know exactly, but I suspect Muirfield's no more than £1,500 a year.
I want to get back to your where your career path is as an agent and an agency and everything. But we'll stay on this for 1 minute.
Yeah.
I'm sure, because I've chatted with you before today, and I know you've got some strong opinions about golf and other things. Do you think that model could ever be replicated in the United States in country clubs?
I think the horse is bolted, but what you are seeing is you're seeing certain. The replication of golf societies here, which is a tradition of British golf, where you'll have a group of like-minded people. My father grew up, and it was the Royal Air Force Golf Society, and there were 50 of them, and twice a year they would go play at allegedly, so-called swanky golf clubs, private golf clubs. And the private golf clubs, again, in Britain would have them. They charge them more of a bit of a premium to come, but they would tell the members, listen, these guys are coming. It's subsidizing your fees.
Right.
And so I think you're starting to see that here with things like Friars, Outpost Club, where they're taking a group, and there are others.
There's a lot of them now, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the British model of a golf society, and we all like it. And certain clubs, they don't like to publicize it, and I don't blame them for that, are telling the members, listen, we've got these guys coming in. They all know they take their hat off when they walk in the clubhouse. They respect the golf course. They respect the game of golf, and they're going to come on. It's a Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And so I think allowing that to happen and access, that's the thing over here, is it's hard to access these better clubs. And so,
but you don't see what I'm always curious about is, obviously you're playing that balance of not pissing off your members and maintaining exclusivity and what they paid for and their access to the golf course whenever they want. But the idea of opening up whatever you're at a country club, whatever your slowest time of the week is, Tuesday after 2 o'clock, to an hour of public tee times at a premium rate. Do you ever see something like that?
I'd love to see it, and I think that is happening with this model of the
That's
golf
how they're
societies.
achieving that, right?
I don't think they'll go to a model where we're going to open up a tee sheet on Golf Now, Wingfoot, and hey, have at it. Because I don't think the members. That's not why the members joined. They have joined so they can kind of rock up and play 9 holes, and now you've got these guys in front of us. The growth in the game that's happened, which is pandemic led because of let's all get outdoors and it's relatively safe, I think it seems to be continuing. It's tailing off a little. You're seeing that where people have come to the game and kind of drifting away again.
Sure.
But I don't.
In part, I imagine because it's hard to get on a golf course. The golf courses are so packed.
They're a premium.
Yeah. Prices are going up.
Yeah.
So back to your timeline.
Yeah.
So did you get away from being that side of the business, the agent?
I did, because I had some illness and less travel and focusing on the kids, and really, I'd spent 12 years being on the back of the range watching guys and gals hit 4 irons for 3 hours, and after a while you kind of lose the will to live. It's enough. You really, and there's countless buckets of golf balls and they'll just keep hitting them. And meanwhile, I'm waiting around for meetings or whatever. So even now, I don't go on tour that often, just because, as you know, you've been there and bought the T-shirt.
You've been around long enough. You've seen the payoff isn't necessarily worth of just standing there for hours.
And as the owner of a business, you have to look at the cost of being there.
Right.
Just as it is for anybody who's traveling, it's an expensive business. And if you're looking at those numbers, it's going to spend $2,500 to be there for 3 or 4 days. What's the value proposition in that?
So like today at Progressive Golf, ballpark, how many players?
I think we have 9.
9. Are you the sole agent for those 9, or do you have other folks that work with you on your team?
We divide it quite easily down the middle. Anybody who's US based on a US tour, I look after. Anybody who's in Europe, Anders looks after, my business partner.
Interesting.
So, for example, Lisa Peterson, she's winning today, and on the ladies European tour, she's Swede. Meg McLaren is in Europe. I won't go through them all, but if they're
British, right?
She's a Brit,
Yeah.
and winner on tour this year, and pretty well known as a great writer, and has a blog where she talks about every aspect of the game of golf, from mental health all the way through.
So at some point, you got, health related, otherwise, you got away from kind of the agency side of the business, and what made you start the consulting business, or did those overlap?
Well, they kind of overlapped, and I was still continuing to run the consulting business, Macduff, even while I wasn't feeling 100% not able, but it didn't involve travel. It involved me being at home and focusing on my health, and being able to still advise from afar as opposed to me needing to show up.
But how did you start? When did you start the consulting business? Approximately
2000.
2000. And why? If you're an agent at the time,
because the bigger agencies tend to be they're very transaction oriented. You've seen Jerry Maguire and those,
Sure.
And it's all about get the deal done, show me the money. That's really not my style. I'd rather have a long-term relationship with client, and the money isn't the deciding factor for me. So I said there's got to be...
For big agencies, are those two things, like what you do with Progressive and what you do with Macduff, at the big agencies, are those the same company?
Yeah, they could be. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, Wasserman and these kinds of big agencies consult to big brands.
I see.
And we consult to a couple of companies as Progressive.
I see.
Helping them in sports, whether it's golf or whether it's looking for other opportunities in sports. But yeah, they're under that umbrella. So if you go, and ProSurf did, when I was there, we had a consulting piece that helped companies utilize sports in the best possible way, and we would be essentially sport agnostic. And say, well, we think tennis is best for you, or we think golf is best, or we think NFL, whatever that happened to be, but depending on the remit of the client.
So Macduff, do you have staff at Macduff, or
No.
it's just you?
No.
And you're utilizing your decades of experience in the business. I'm sure you've got a Rolodex that's longer than most in the business, going through everything you've gone through already. Got it. Okay, interesting. So to talk a little bit real quickly about, or not necessarily quickly, but so you got back into being an agent. How long were you not an agent? Like, what was that gap before you got approached by your current partner at Progressive?
Probably 8 years or something like that. Yeah.
Why get back into it?
You know what? I was on the road to recovery, and I was feeling better and feeling more able to travel. And I'm good friends with Anders Davidson, who's the other owner of it, and he basically convinced me. And I said, yeah, I can add value to this by the relationships I have with the existing manufacturers, and also outside of that, and also the recruitment side of things, and helping him recruit players. Although that said, he did an unbelievable job in recruiting the first half dozen clients we have.
Is that a challenge, being a kind of the small boutique agency, that if one of these players that's currently on the Corn Fair, for instance, gets really hot, gets really good, all of a sudden makes the tour, blows up, that there's going to be a time that comes where they get poached by some massive agency?
There isn't an agency who would sit in front of you who said that they're 100% secure in that could or could not happen. It absolutely can happen. And that's when it's down to the relationship that you have with the player. And it's also down to a certain extent to the deals you've done for that player.
Sure.
So that happens, and you read about that happened with Rory, had an agent, small business, and then he wanted to go off on his own, and there was a settlement and things changed. So, yeah.
You talked a lot about Greg Norman. Do you still have a relationship with Greg Norman?
I do not, no.
Do not?
No. I'm kind of following what's going on.
Sure, I bet. Let's touch it, but there's a few other, all right, we've done your career. There's a few other things I want to ask you about, but let's talk about some current events. I want to ask you about some some of your favorite courses, maybe some local courses. I want to ask you about a few things. There's a particular, you used to have a blog, and I found an old article about some things that make you hot.
Right.
That I want to touch on, but let's talk on because you in our kind of phone call the other day, you quickly hit on what's going on with LIV and the PGA Tour. It's the biggest story in golf in decades. Give us your overall opinion there.
It's complicated. Obviously, some of the listeners will have heard the press conference with the commissioner, Jay Monahan, who several months ago said, that it will go away, LIV will go away, and we're doing our own thing. And his response and the tour's response seems, in my opinion, to have created LIV 2. So now we've got 2 LIV tours. And we're going to find out by the time this comes out, we will know which players are leaving on Monday, if indeed that is the case, then a number of players are leaving the PGA Tour and going to LIV, whether that includes Cam or whether it includes whoever else is going to switch from PGA Tour membership to the LIV. One thing's for sure is the LIV is not going away. Norman has a beef, and now he has a beef with money. And so he has the Saudi money, and they are going to, they've already announced, I think it's 14 events in 23. Mm-hmm. They've already announced that they're going to take the Asian Tour and put a tremendous amount of money into the Asian Tour. And so the PGA Tour for many, many months, for reasons best known to themselves, didn't think it was going to happen. And their position was entrenched, and now Tiger and Rory have stepped in as assistant commissioners and said, this is what we need to do. So they've just thrown more money at it. And they've also done some extraordinary things with this PIP money, which is this Player Impact Program.
Do you think that there's a lot of talk about how Monahan basically didn't do anything for 6 months after it was clear that this was coming down the pike? He thought it was going away, especially after the Mickelson comments from Shipnuck's book came out. And then his inaction kind of opened the door for this all to happen. But do you think, could he have done anything differently, or what would that be?
I still find it unfathomable as a leader of a large organization that he wouldn't get in the room and listen to what they had to say. Right. Keep your enemies, close, and whatever the expression is. But why would he not take a meeting and say, tell me what you're thinking about? Because now they're talking to the Rain Group, who are a private equity firm. And, this story's got a lot to run yet. Long way to run. Because whilst the LIV, and answering your question, he should have got in a room, tell me what you're thinking of doing. You have a wall of money, as much money as you want. You've already said, we can't outspend you. And then amazingly, he's found a few $100 million, so maybe they can try and compete. But they're not going to compete with their money. So get in a room, and we'll take some of that money and bolster the PGA Tour. And more importantly for me, as a player agent, bolster the secondary tours, the Korn Ferry and the PGA Tour Latin America, so that the new breed of players come through. You're going to have access to those players as well. Because if you don't, these guys are going to go and join the LIV.
As a player agent, this is somewhat good news, just because there's a huge influx of money all over the sport.
It's all boats are being raised, but the why they wouldn't get in, I don't know. It's punch and counterpunch. The LIV is not going to take this recent announcement by the tour for this $100 million of PIP money, which is essentially a popularity contest.
Yeah, the PIP money, I can't really wrap my head around.
I don't understand.
And it's so secretive. It just seems like all BS. It's just a way to throw some money at their top.
It's just another way to. And bear in mind, the initial PIP money was it $50 million?
I'm not sure.
For 10 guys, and 5 of those guys took the money and left, and they're with the LIV. So that wasn't the best use of funds.
Didn't have quite the impact.
Didn't have the impact, and you're now going to allow these 20 guys who, I don't know, because they've got better social media than everybody else, or they're the most popular guys, are going to get into these events.
What I mean, how do you see this all playing out? Because what bothers me, I think, more than anything about it is just the fact that the product likely suffers simply because you take any sport, not just golf. You take football, basketball, soccer, whatever, and you spread it out across multiple leagues. I guess traditional soccer or traditional football, I should say. In Europe, they've done that and succeeded well, but it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked in the United States,
Right.
With the USFL versus football. I mean, there was a merger way back when the AFL and the NFL, or the ABA and the NBA. But typically, multiple products it dilutes what you're watching and is worse for the fan. I think that's my big concern. Is all of a sudden hopefully the four majors still have everybody, and that they're still the majors and they still matter so much. But what you're watching just isn't that great. You get twice as much.
Right.
It's so separated that it's just not as good of a product for the fan.
And the PGA Tour has always been very US centric, and all of this talk of World Golf Championships never materialized. And now essentially they're going to have, I think, 14 World Golf Championships, and then you're going to have the top players.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's no announcement about playing anywhere apart from America. Right? Now, we may do the Scottish Open. Okay. And not the best golf course in East Lothian at Renaissance Club. And so all that's doing is allowing the LIV to say, well, we'll take the rest of the world. Now, that leaves you Australia, great golf courses, Asia, great golf courses, Africa, Europe, and what's the other...
And the television market throughout the rest of the world is still pretty large.
Still pretty large, and the last time I looked, there were more people outside of America than are in America.
Correct. Right.
And that's where the game continues to grow well. Right. And all this talk of growth of the game and that we're growing the game, as everybody knows, is complete BS. This is about money.
So how do you see the landscape 5 years from now?
I have no idea is the answer, but I still hope that they will all get in a room and work this out, because it's great for player agents, because if you have players who are in either of these scenarios, the players are going to make more money. But it is not good for professional golf in the long run that this will happen. And you have a potential scenario where you have two tours with very good players. So over here we've got Bryson and we've got DJ and etc. Mm-hmm. And there are more to come, right? And then over here you've got the PGA Tour, who have their set of players. Okay, it's Rory and whoever else is Justin Thomas, etc. So now at the end of the day, I don't think the consumer really cares. Yeah, this is a golf specific industry thing. I think if you ask people and members at Washington Golf, they're like, I don't even know the difference. But why would they? Why would they care? They just want the best possible players playing on the best possible golf courses, which again the PGA Tour rarely does. Mm-hmm. They play on average golf courses, and so they need to get it worked out. Yeah. And again, the average golf consumer doesn't really care how much they're playing for. They don't even know. PGA Tour doesn't even publish it. Try find it on the Monday morning for fantasy golf. You can't find it.
What, the purses?
The purse. They tell you here's the purse. Yeah. And then the next, try and find how much they won. You have to look and look and look and look.
What about the idea, even if you take opinions of the Saudi Arabian government out of it, just the fact that it is a government running a golf tour, running a sports league, does that give you pause?
No. And the talk about Saudi Arabia is a complete... the old expression is MacGuffin in the book world. It's just a red herring.
But is there another example of a sports league that's literally run by the government?
Well, it's not really run by the government.
Or funded by the government.
They're funded by the government. Sure. That's a good question. I honestly don't know that, but they're not running the golf tournaments. The LIV has hired extremely good people to run inside the ropes and outside the ropes. And if indeed they do what they say they're going to do, or rumored that they start selling the teams, and these silly names go away and they start selling it to Cisco and IBM and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
But it does strike me, because we can go off this in a second, but when it is run by a government, the way it's set up right now, it's going to take some time. They're putting so much money into it. In theory, it's going to take quite some time before they turn a profit. and their motivation seems to be maybe profit's not their motivation.
I don't think profit is the motivation.
Exactly. But so if profit's not the motivation, at some point, whether it be, I mean, they clearly seem very committed to it, but 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, at some point they might decide, let's put our focus elsewhere. And because it's government run, they can just turn it off like a switch.
They could. And now Bryson and DJ and etc. are now looking for a job somewhere else. That could happen. Yeah. It isn't a great amount of money in the grand scheme of things. Aramco's quarterly number, they made $48 billion net. Mm-hmm. So, okay, we're taking 5% of that and we're going to go own golf or work within the golf environment. So the money thing is for the Saudis. I've done business in the Middle East. You know, you think you're well off and then you go to the Middle East and forget it.
Right.
I mean, it's money you've never seen before. I can even imagine if they do go through with this plan to create this city that's 100 miles long and what have you. This is a rounding error.
Right.
So it's the other thing that are they concerned about the profitability? I don't know, but and there's talk of well they don't have a television deal, and this is significant that they're running it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. There are many outlets looking for content. They will find a television partner. People love.
By the way, you talk to any kid under the age of 30, and YouTube is a television deal.
Well, and this is my point I'm about to make is I try to get my son who's 16, keen on golf, to get him to sit down on Sunday afternoon and watch the product that the PGA Tour puts out on NBC or CBS. You've got no chance. And I said, hey, watch the Live. It's on YouTube, and it's boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Things are happening. There's a shot every 30 seconds, and this is what happened. And so he's like, oh, actually, he stuck with it for an hour. And he goes, oh, it's just a bit more exciting, a bit more interesting. I said, well, okay, yeah, it is. And everyone's loving the fact, oh, well, there's only 100,000 people watching. Well, go look at the Golf Channel's numbers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Interesting. So for folks listening, if you get the opportunity to play a round of golf with Nick, it'll be a lively conversation. You got we only played once. We played at Laurel Hill, probably about a year ago, but I had a great time. We played. I can't remember what we played. We essentially played a 2-on-2 kind of best ball match, and you and Josh Stevie beat us. But it was great conversation. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Speaking of that, so where in the DC area do you live? Bethesda. Yeah. Do you have a home course or?
I do not. No, I'm on the Digest panel, and so I get to go around and play different places. I guess our home course is Falls Road.
The Falls Road was my high school home course. Love Falls Road. Can you talk about that? How long have you been on the Golf Digest panel?
About 10 years.
About 10 years.
Yeah.
For golf, I mean, traditionally that's been the dream role of any golfer, is being on one of these ratings panels where you can kind of, I mean, can you dispel the myths? Can you call up a club and just say, I'm a rater, can I come out? And they just open the doors?
No, we have a list and respectfully ask if it's appropriate to come out at a certain time. Certain clubs, they will say, yes, you can come, and we always give notice and always write thank you notes afterwards. But you can't call up Cyprus and say, hey, can I come out and play? There are lists. The list says where you can play and where you can't play.
Do you have to maintain your status as a rater? Do you have to play X number of courses across X number of geographic area every year? Or no,
I think as I understand it, there are raters in every state.
Yeah.
You have to submit. I don't think there's a minimum number of rankings, because when I wasn't well, wasn't able to do it. But there are. I don't know, 6 or 10 or something like that. It's not as if you have to, and some guys play every week.
Right.
I don't have the ability to be able to do that, but
right. yeah, I've started to read. I haven't finished it, but there's a book about all of the different panels by Jonathan Cummings called The Ratings Game.
Right.
And I actually heard him on the Fried Egg podcast, and it got me to buy the book, and I started to read it. I got to finish it, but it kind of breaks down all the differences. Pretty interesting. So as a rater, the DC area, that was kind of one of the reasons I started this podcast was, if this podcast is a thesis, it's almost like defending DC area golf, and because if you follow a lot of people that are really into golf architecture, and golf courses, this area doesn't have the best reputation for classic golf course design.
Like Philly, for example.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the podcast was like, well, that may be the case. It's certainly up for debate. But I wanted to elevate that this is still a huge golf town, and the personalities here, and there's so many people that are so into golf. But that being said, if we stick to within 50 miles of DC, what are some that stand out for you?
I was just at Congressional and playing the new blue, Andrew Green's blue, which I think is exceptional. I think it's jumped back, in my opinion, back to number one. I think it had lost its way architecturally, as many people who know a lot more about this than me would agree. I think he's done a great job.
What do you think about the controversial hole there? Seems to be number 10, the par 3.
I mean, I don't mind a short par 3. I think there's nothing wrong with having a short par 3. I don't have a problem with it. It's I think it's absolutely. Is it the best hole in the golf course? No, but I think it's just fine as a bridge between as you move up to the new, much improved 11.
Yes, number 11 is fantastic.
Yeah, great golf hole now, which it wasn't before.
Yeah,
with the sneaky water on the right, which
it blends right into 12, really, with the connected fairway.
I think he's done a great job, and he's the kind of seems to be one of the new rock and roll stars in the industry.
Sure.
I fortunately get to play now and again Burning Tree. I think Burning Tree is with the redo is very, very good.
I imagine not too many listeners have played Burning Tree, but maybe I'm wrong. I know I haven't.
Worth trying to find somebody. I'm a big fan of RTJ. I've always liked RTJ. It's out there. If it's 50 miles within your definition of 50 miles, I don't know.
That's close. Yeah, absolutely.
I think RTJ is great.
They're hosting the Solheim Cup in 2024.
I think. Okay. Yeah. Publicly, I think Laurel Hill, we talked about where you and I play, I think is great. Josh Stevie introduced me to Laurel, and I've been out there quite a few times. I think that's great. It isn't Philly. I mean, you're not discovering places in Philly like Lulu. You go, what happened here? Where's this from? It doesn't have that. I think the new and improved Wash Golf is much better than it was. And this is Tom Doak's done it with Mike McCartan's help. Yep. It's a much better golf course where we're being hosted today. You can't easily name half a dozen golf courses, which you can in Chicago or you can in Philadelphia.
Right. Let's talk about a little bit. So before I let you go, we're coming up on, we're a little bit over an hour here. I came across you. See, it seems to be you maybe gave it up at some point, but you used to have a blog that can still be found out there related to Macduff Golf, and there was an article on there that I thought was great, where you kind of listed off some things that you didn't love in golf or that drove you a little crazy. I think you titled it "Things That Make Me Hot." And
okay,
I'll let you sound off a little bit on each one, even if brief, but I'll bring up a couple on one. I totally get this, especially coming from England, is golf carts.
Yeah, I grew up playing by walking. I still believe golf is a walking game. I still despise getting to the ball too soon, and I don't enjoy seeing golf carts, the paths that are on golf courses, and spoiling the view. It's just not my way to play golf. Given the choice, I would always walk, and recommend whoever's listening to just walk. Take less clubs, or take less golf balls, take less of everything if you want to lighten the load. Take 8
I think one of the big misconceptions with golf carts is that it speeds the round up.
Oh no, it's well proven it doesn't speed it up.
But most people don't know that.
No, they think because we're driving 15 miles an hour, we're going quicker. Well, you're not, because you can't go anywhere near the green, and now they've got these carts where you go a certain place and they won't allow you to go anywhere else. You have to back up. It's just not my idea. And if you go play golf in the UK, you'll find very few golf courses that have golf carts. We call them buggies. But
even like the newer design golf courses over there?
Some of the newer ones do have them because it's a revenue generator.
Right.
But not my way to play.
But it certainly seems like there's a lot of golf courses here that the way it was just the way the land they had or the property they had, like if it was some kind of residential golf development, that walking's just not really an option.
No,
right?
and you certainly need that.
Yeah.
So, certainly, as you say, residential development where you got walks from greens to tees that are half a mile.
right? Drives you crazy.
Yeah.
This one, it totally makes sense. I don't know if I've ever actually thought about it. The double logo.
Yeah, the double logo is a kind of a thing.
I've probably been guilty of it once or twice.
Yeah, it's particularly when you're taking name brand golf courses. If you're wearing a Cypress logo on your shirt and you're wearing a Chicago Golf Club hat, then immediately you should be banned from our four ball. And if you go the triple logo,
one logo at a time.
If you go the triple logo and you've got the belt on as well, then you really
just look like a clown.
Need a bigger mirror to get dressed in.
Rangefinders for amateurs.
Yeah, it's just another thing that
I'm guilty of this.
I don't use a rangefinder. There's 150-yard stakes out. I'm a reasonably good golfer and kind of know my distances. Most people who use rangefinders don't know if they're hitting 140 or 180, and then they're standing over it going, I got 166. So I say to them, okay, show me a 166-yard shot, and they can't do it because they're not good enough. So all it does is just one more thing. Then they can't find the flag. It's not. I'm picking up the cart behind me. I'm like, just hit the ball.
Right.
Yeah,
aim for the center of the green. Do you? But what about? I mean, it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm curious about because you seem to be, you've been in the game longer. You're more of a traditionalist. Yardage markers on golf courses.
I don't mind that. That's fine. I mean, that's that.
I wish there was more of them.
But
I get the sense that some traditionalists, especially of golf course architecture, that they don't want any markers out there because it spoils the view or the aesthetics.
The traditional way you'd put a little bush there for 150 yards or a tree or something. I don't mind that. And you just wander by. Your ball's 20 yards ahead, and you wander by. And you look down. It's 153. Okay, so I've got 133-ish.
Yeah.
Very few of us are good enough to know how far 133 yards are.
Right.
The tour guys do, but the rest of us aren't getting paid.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Couple more here. Fixed height tees.
Fixed height tees, really? I mean,
I actually wrote that one down because I didn't even think I knew what that was.
Yeah.
And then the other day, I grabbed a handful of tees. I've got this box in my garage.
Yeah.
And one ended up, and I reached in. I played 9 holes last Monday, and there was a fixed height tee in my bag.
Right.
And I played it, and I was like, oh, this is what he's talking about, right? And I don't even think I knew what it was.
If you're not good enough to know what height to tee up your ball, you really shouldn't be out there. The other thing is they don't work because grass tends to be spongy, so it's either going down in the ground or it's on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shocker.
But here's another one. Because a lot of this all goes back to, we're talking about, the influx of golfers into the sport and packed golf courses and tee sheets, holing out every putt.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with another gentleman that I played with recently, and they were keen on playing rattle bottom golf, making sure that it wasn't really a true score if you didn't hole out every single putt. It did give them. They were certainly better than me at making 3-footers,
right?
Because that's what they do every time. But my argument has always been, if we're talking about pace of play,
right?
And
I grew up in Britain where we predominantly play match play. So, and the term inside the leather, and sometimes you see on the tour occasionally guys would question it, but you're supposed to be having fun, right? That's the whole point of golf. You're playing with people you would like to play with, and sharing all the joys that golf brings, and really working hard over a 2.5-foot putt when I can just give it to you and we can halve the match. That's all we want.
Right.
We're not trying to play on tour. So, and I play with people off 18 handicap who insist on putting it out. And I say something, I'm like, that's good, pick it up. And I just pick it up for them because I can't bear it. We play at Fool's Row. We play with, we just play with whoever. That's one of the funs of going out to public golf courses. You play with two. And after a while, if they start holing out and moving the I'm like, that's good. And they're like, oh, it's 2 feet. Is that okay? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Just let's keep moving.
Well, listen, this has been terrific. I appreciate you taking some time, setting us up here at Washington Golf and Country Club in the Wilson Room. Probably be a long time before I get back into this room. But this has been cool. I appreciate you sharing all of your backstory, your history, and your expertise on this great game. And best of luck on September 12th for the 100-hole hike at Schoolhouse 9. And if anybody's listening, they don't know what Schoolhouse 9 is, look back at my catalog. I did interview Cliff Miller and Mike McCartan on this podcast to talk all about Schoolhouse 9. So best of luck.
Been a pleasure. Thanks, Alex.
Excellent.
I don't have a good golf game, but I don't really care. I'm a regular dude living in DC, and I want to know about DC-centric golf stuff. If you can tell me something that I don't already know, then that is great for me. I don't want the regular stuff. I want exciting stuff. I want different stuff. I want stuff I can't hear elsewhere. But I want it to be about DC golf.